Okay, hope everyone's having a good week. I'm going to kind of minimize my screen. I've already got the screen share on. You should be able to see it on your end. Can you guys see it all right? Okay, Jessica, I saw you're the only one I can see right now, Jessica, because I minimized everything. So if you remember last week, I said we would go back real quick and review some of the things we talked about last week with norm reference, and then I would shift over and go ahead and start talking a little bit about CBM, just to kind of get you thinking about that. Because if you remember from earlier Zoom meetings, the CBM assessment, we are going to ask you to try to get 5 to 6 data points. So that means you will have to administer that probe. Probe is just another name for assessment. 5 to 6 times. And so by going ahead and talking a little bit about it tonight, kind of getting you thinking about it, maybe going in and starting, and then knowing it's a busy time of the year, you can go ahead and kind of start that, spread it out, and that way you don't have to crunch everything in there together and try to get those probes administered within a day or two. So, anyway, I have a slide deck from last week popped up. I'm just kind of going to go over it quickly, hit some of the high points. We talked a bit about norm reference test and what makes up norm reference and what does it entail. And so we talked about the item pool or the test questions, how they're created, how they go in and develop those, do field tests, then they do revisions, and they field test larger samples. And so one of the main things is we talked about what is norm reference. What's the easiest way to tell what it is? And it's simply when we compare that student to a large group of other students that are similar age, background, and grade level. Okay. Another key identifier for norm reference is you're usually always going to see a percentile rank and a standard score. If you see those two in a report, you know it's a norm reference test. We talked about going in and how we interpolate data and how it's reported. A lot of times the scores on these reports are written using decimals. So you may see 4.2. That could be fourth grade, second month on that. Or you might see 12.6. Could be 12 years, 6 months. So they could express it in age equivalencies or grade equivalencies. Those are a couple different ways. Also, we talked about just kind of the procedures in administering those. We can't just go in when we administer norm reference test in a manner that's willy-nilly, basically. I mean, there are very structured guidelines that we have to follow. It's really good. I talked about trying to meet that student before you even sit down with them, especially if you're an outside examiner, to try to just establish some rapport, try to make them feel at ease, and then also maybe go over a brief explanation of what that test is and try to, ensure that that student's calm and collected when they go into test, because if not, it definitely has an impact on the test. Here, I kind of shared with you last week a slide that shows you how to hand calculate chronological age. If you notice, or if you sit in Meigs meetings, they usually will show the student's age the day that perhaps I came in to test them. So on that day, they might have been 8 years, 5 months, and 24 days old. Okay. Very rarely will you have to hand calculate it, but it just shows an example here. On my end, when I do it, the scoring software does it all. I put all the information in and it provides that. Okay. That just kind of gives you an idea how we do that. Raw scores, that's the first score you're going to get. Remember that. Literally, if you have 20 questions and they've got 15 correct, the raw score is 15 out of 20. Okay. That's the first score that we will get in the normed when we go in and do a norm reference test. And then we take the raw score and then it's normed and we come up with the standard score, the percentile ranks, age equivalency, grade equivalency. Okay, so literally it's just the number of answers that they get correct. Next two things you remember I covered, and it was on, for those of you that weren't able to join the slide, but it was on the review questions. Talked about two important specific terms that I talked about when administering tests that pertain to the starting point and the end point in that process. So the basal is where we start the student off. It can be based off their age and the subtest. Okay, it tells us where to start. I gave you an example. If I come in to test a student that's a seventh grader and that subtest in reading fluency has 100 questions on it, it tells me based on the student's grade level that I need to start he or she out on problem number 30. Okay, that would be the basal. That's the starting point. And then when I score it, problems 1 through 29 are automatically scored correct. Okay, the ceiling with that same student, I start them off, their basal is 30, and the base or the ceiling on that subtest is 6 consecutive problems that are answered incorrectly is a ceiling. So literally I could start that student on 30 and they miss the first 6, I automatically stop the test. We're done. Okay. So the ceiling is the stopping point. Okay. Here I give you an example. For example, the student is 6 years, 4 months. I'm going to start them with item 10. Or the student is eighth grade, third month. I'm going to start them on item 50. Okay, each subtest is different, has a different ceiling and a basal. Uh, Next thing I talked about the protocols. Basically, guys, protocol is just a fancy name for a test booklet, the test administration booklet that I use to score. Okay, remember I talked about last week too, if you ever get to see one of these or you observe the school psychometrist or psychologist administering those, you're going to see a series of ones and zeros. Ones means it's the correct answer they got or they gave me. Zero means it's incorrect. Okay, that's how we score. Getting the best results. We talked just a little bit about that. Talked about trying to meet with the student you're going to examine in advance, try to make sure that they feel at ease, maybe do some observation just to kind of get a idea a little bit more of the student's background. And then when we go and administer that, I have to be really careful, if you remember, on my responses, not to reinforce right or wrong answers. I just need to reinforce their efforts that they put forth. Okay, so very specific. Talked a bit about reducing bias. Okay, ways we do that is making sure that um, test accessibility for students that have communication impairments, also sensory impairments. We want to make sure that those tests don't limit the student. We want to make sure that the materials are appropriate for the student as far as their ability to respond. Okay, we want to look at background differences, classroom instruction, and familiarity with the student. Okay, we talked about a little bit about the scores, raw score. I just explained that a while ago. It's a number of correct answers they get out of that set. So 15 out of 20, that's the raw score. Then we have others. If you remember, excuse me, last week, I talked about each one of these and the ones that you're more likely to see on a given report. Okay. You're going to for sure see percentile rank. Mentioned that a while ago. That's one of the key terms you look for. That way you know it's normed. You'll definitely see age equivalent, grade equivalent. The other types of scores, T-score, Z-score, and Stanine score, not as common. Some reports show that. If your school uses star reading and star math, when you print off those reports, most of the time it will give you a T-score and a Z-score when you use star reading and math. Okay, so that's where you're going to see that a lot. Group testing. Remember, we discussed this last week. You guys have been involved with group testing right now, right? Standardized or achievement tests. Those are done in a group. Norm reference, what we've been talking about, it's done one-on-one. Okay? I, the examiner, come in. I have a student. I administer that one-on-one. You have been involved with group testing the last few weeks since spring break. State test, right? High stakes test, standardized test, or achievement. All the same. Okay. We just want to make sure that they are logical and serve purpose that they were intended. If you remember last week, I talked a little bit about those tests were often used for accountability purposes, and that really all came to fruition back during the Bush administration, um, with No Child Left Behind. If you remember, I used the term "No Child Left Untested." That's what we used to say back when all that came into inception. Okay. Here we talked a bit about core principles of administering assessments, and it basically, it includes all students to hold schools accountable. We talked a little bit about the percentage of special education students that could be used on alternative assessments. Remember, we talked about the 1% cap, and your SPED director and administration would communicate that with you. Okay, so that's one thing that they monitor and watch. So you have that 1% cap that you can utilize for alternative assessment. Um, they're also designed or were intended to allow students to show their knowledge on skills with some challenging content. Also, they were designed for the purpose of high quality decision making to determine how students participate, and public reporting all came about through this. Most of your states have state report cards and district report cards. It's an accountability tool or accountability document. Okay. When we talk about IDA and the alternative assessment, I mentioned the 1% cap that you guys can do. Um, talk about accommodations that can be made. Okay. Oftentimes these things are written into accommodations into the IEP. A lot of this is often discussed if this a particular student is of a grade level that falls under state assessments. And so a lot of times your accommodations are set up in the IEP. Those accommodations can be used in the classroom as well as when it comes to state testing. Okay, it could be anything in changes of format, the mode in which they respond, the setting in which where they are administered this, or timing or scheduling. Okay. We just cannot alter what the test is designed to measure. Okay. Accommodation should prevent measuring that student's disability. All right. Same thing when we look at 504 as well. Okay. Determining how assessment requirements are met for IEP and 504. Here, again, it reemphasizes the 1% cap on the number of students who may take alternative assessments. Those alternative assessments, depending on where you're located at, if you're in a different state, most alternative assessments include a portfolio, could be performance-based, authentic, and even observation. Okay. Here it gets into, and I won't go into depth on it. You can go back and look at it, but a little bit about specific issues and some of the research that's been done with um, high stakes testing. And then even you may know of or have stories in your particular state if you have a state report cards and district report cards. Uh, we call them the A through F report cards here in Oklahoma. Okay, it's kind of somewhat controversial, and they're even going in right now and tweaking those. I mean, they'll include a variety of things, including some testing data they pull in. Here in Oklahoma, we also have a component of that that's called chronic absenteeism. And so if those students miss X number of days, you basically get dinged on your chronic absenteeism report. And that's another factor of the report card. So again, testing is just one component of it. Here we talk just a little bit about the different principles of design, making sure that the tests are accessible, that there's not a lot of excessive physical effort that has to go into it. making sure that the design of the test communicates the information in an easy manner, it's simple and intuitive to use, and that you have a little bit of flexibility on when and where you administer that with the students. So again, I just kind of wanted to go over and brush over that quickly before I really kind of start talking a little bit about CBM. Okay, I'm gonna kind of just introduce some of the basics to you tonight on CBM, talk a little bit about what it is and is not. But before I jump over there quickly, I just kind of wanted to touch base quickly on the norm reference assessment you have coming up Sunday. If you guys remember, it's due this Sunday evening. All right. There's an example. I had a student email me, said, "Hey, I'm not able to see it in there." I went in and the visibility button was turned off. So I got it turned on. You can see it. It's in the SPED 805 resources folder. And you go down to sample reports. You'll click on that folder. It will expand. You'll see an example of an informal. Then it's going to say norm reference. And then right below it will be a CBM that's there as a reference, and the visibility button on that was also off. So both of them you should be able to see now. Okay. Are any of you having struggles putting that norm reference together? You feel good about it? Is there any specific questions you want to ask me before I start talking about CBM?
Is this the right one?
Is that the one I did?
Well, I thought so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I did that's in the course shell.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think I found it the way you said to find it. Um, I didn't find it in resources, but I
Not
found it.
that, not the comprehensive report. That's a comprehensive report. I've got an example of what your assignment should look like. That is the data. That right there is a comprehensive report that goes with the 805 testing lab video if you need to use my video to complete this assignment.
So this isn't what it should look like.
No, that is a comprehensive report
Well,
to
I've
get your
got a lot of information out.
There's a lot of data on there. Yes. If you are using my video, that's what you want to use right there. It's a comprehensive report. It's very lengthy.
No, I'm using my own
Okay, you're
information,
good.
but I put it in that form. But I have all the information out, so now I'll just find the right form to put it
I'm
in.
going to do a stop share real quick and let me see if I can get into real quick. Let me go and I'll show you. Let me get down to the 805. So we'll make, okay. 805 resources, you click on it, it expands. I'm going to go down here, Eileen, to sample reports, and I've already got it open. Example of informal. Here's an example of the norm reference. Right below it is the CBM. Okay. So you go to 805 resources, go down to sample reports, and then it'll be the second item listed.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. And then also um lesson plan.
Yes, the lesson plan goes with it. Each one of these will have. Okay. So I'll just click this open quickly. You should be able to see it on your screen as I'm doing it. So basically, you're going to see here's an abstract. Okay. It's pretty much set up like your informal. You have your identifying information. Okay. Your background. If you're using the same student, guys, remember you can take your background off the informal and drop it in right here. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel on that if it is the same student. Okay. The next section will be test results and interpretations. Okay, so it's pretty much the same format up to this point, right? From what you did last week. Okay, here you have a data chart that they used. Okay, here is where they implemented their bell curve. This student, this was before I provide semester before I provided the template, the Google sheet that has the bell curve, and you just literally put your subtest and it has a bar graph underneath. Okay, this student drew theirs in. Okay, so they drew their bar graph and then they plotted or showed the three subtests they used where the student fell. So if you look here, 100 is the mean. Okay, it's right in the middle. Standard deviation's 15, so it goes 100 to 115 or down to 85. Anything 85 to 100 is in the average range. 85 to 70 is low average. Okay, and then we get below 70, it's red flags popping up everywhere. Okay, the mean was 100. Okay, so he's talked about where the student fell, their scores, and where they fell. So their standard score was a 91. That's not their percentile rank, that's their standard score. Okay. If you guys talk about percentile ranks in your report, remember what that is? Their percentile rank, they scored at the 62nd percentile. That means that they scored as good, if not better, than 62% of the students that took that same test. That was their percentile rank. These are strictly standard scores right here. Okay. So you can see based on the three data points that this student put on here, the three subtests they used, students scored a 91, an 89, their standard score, and a 101. So they fell in the average range on two of them. And then on this one, they were just one standard score over above average. They were 101. Okay. See how it works? Okay, so after we show that, that's in the test results and interpretation, we have a summary and conclusion. Okay, it's just kind of providing a brief summary and concluding everything that you covered, and you're concluding the report and giving a brief summary of the student and their overall performance. And then a recommendation. What would you recommend for this student moving forward based on your scores for the norm reference? We're not worried about what you've already done for the informal. We're just looking at what you've done or the scores you've gotten for the norm reference. Okay, so they talk about the scores from the Woodcock-Johnson test of achievement, mathematical subtest, conclude that the student is not having specific learning disabilities, and then they go on and explain their recommendation. Okay, any instructional planning recommendation? This one here, determined on one of the subtests, maybe he was a little slower on remembering for his age, remembering multiplication facts. So we're going to do a little refresher on multiplication facts using flashcards to help his automatic recall, making it easier for that student to grasp concepts in his geometry class. Okay, talks about understanding new concepts, so they're going to recommend some extended time in math class to complete some assignments that will benefit the student. Changing grade level material is not suggested. Okay, and content modification would not be recommended. Okay, and then copy the permission form. That's pretty much it. So it's the exact same sections that you use for the informal. Okay.
Is it a different permission form than what we did last time?
It's the same permission form. If it's the same student, if it's the same student, all you gotta do is go down here and write in what the norm reference was. I'll see your informals up here and just resubmit it. You don't have to get a brand new form. You've already, if it's the same student. Okay. Just add it on. Eileen, if you're going to use the same student for CBM when we get there, you'll write the CBM probe right there, and you'll resubmit it. Okay.
Now, my student is social emotional.
Okay.
Um,
Then
that-
you'll write it on there. Yep. Okay. So that is where the norm reference. Now, anything else on norm reference before I kind of switch gears here, the last part, because I told you this is the week. If you remember, we're going to talk about two different assignments in the same Zoom meeting. So this is that point in the 8 weeks where we're literally almost going to be working on two things at the same time. But I'm just going to introduce it to you tonight so you can think about what type of probe you want to locate. Is there anything else you might want to ask me on norm reference before I kind of shift over to CBM? No? Everyone good? Okay. CBM, curriculum-based measurement. Basically, we're going to talk in terms of probe. Probe is just another name for an assessment. Okay, it's an assessment that's going to target specific skill over the subject area content that you are currently teaching. Okay, and it is one that's meant to be administered multiple times within a window of time to make sure that that student is progressing and understanding content. Okay, and by administering this 5 to 6 times, we're going to plot the data on a graph. And if we see that our numbers drop, that tells us that we need to stop, determine what intervention would need to be implemented, use that intervention for approximately a week, and then we'll turn around and re-administer the probe, and we hope that that score will increase. So as we plot these on a graph, we want to see an upward trajectory of our plots, of our scores. We want to see it going upward. If we start off at a point and the scores drop and then they come up and then they drop again, it tells us we need to go in and put in an intervention. We're not getting the consistency. So it tells us the grade level content is a little bit higher than that student's current ability level. And I'm going to show you what this looks like here in just a minute on when I talk about plotting the data points. The probe is something that's very easy to administer. I always tell classes it's a glorified informal assessment. That's all it is. But the one thing that we want to make sure we're doing is that you can go in and modify that probe. We don't want to give the same exact one in the same exact order as far as questions or problems. We want to be able to move the questions, or if it's math, the math problems around, same content, just in a different order as we re-administer that. That way they can't memorize it. Okay, but we're assessing the material that they're currently learning. Okay, I'm going to share my screen to show you what this chart looks like that's embedded in the CBM report. Okay, also while we're on CBMs, we're going to talk about three new terms. We're going to talk about one, aim line, a baseline, and an intervention line. Those are the three new items that we're going to focus on when we're reporting this data that we're collecting from the CBM. But I want to show you what it looks like first. The first chart in the CBM report is much like charts that you've already created in the informal. Okay, simple graph chart. Okay, very straightforward to what you've done. But the next thing is this. We're plotting the data points. You see these dots here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This was way back several semesters ago when this class was taught in a full 16-week semester. Okay, we spent Oh man, good 4 or 5 weeks just on this. So they had more time to get more data points. Okay. We're doing this in 8 weeks, so it's a very condensed version. But those dots are each time a probe was administered. And so that's a score. So the first time it was administered, students scored a 31 is on August the 28th. The 29th, this instructor gave the probe again, and it was about a 41. So it was upward, right? We want to see that upward line. Instructor turned around on the 30th and gave the probe again, and we had a drop. We saw it go down a little bit. See this line here? It's what we refer to as an intervention line. It shows that we stopped. We're going to separate everything here. We caught it. This over here is the baseline. Okay, we started off at 30, we went up, and we came down. So we established our base here, and it dropped. Intervention line. We used the intervention from August the 30th until over to September the 4th, and we started administering a probe again. Hey, it went up. Look at here. We gained some points. We gained some more. So we're seeing this upward trajectory, right? This orange line is what we call the aim line. So from this point, Eileen, we're going to ask you to go ahead and construct this aim line on how you anticipate their scores are going to come out from September 4th probe administration until you do the last one on the 9th. You're going to go ahead and put your prediction line or your aim line on there, and then you'll go in and start adding your plots. And we hope that it follows this aim line upward. And for the most part, it has, except right there we had just a little, almost it leveled off, and then it started going right back up. So this particular student, if you see where they put their aim line and where it ended, they ended almost spot on October the 9th out here. Okay. Baseline is over here. That's what we will refer to in the report. The baseline was established with the first three test administrations. Student dropped on the third probe. I implemented an intervention line, took a little time off to do that intervention, came back after Labor Day. I started my probes again. Guess what? At the end of the 6 weeks, however long it was, 5 weeks, they achieved where the aim line predicted they would be. And that's what we hope to see. Now, if you come over here and this thing drops back down, what do you think you would do, Eileen, based on what you saw over here?
Try a different intervention.
Yeah, you would put another intervention line in there and you would go back and try a different intervention, wait another week, and then pick it back up. And then we hope it goes up. But if you're seeing it start to do a sudden drop, we know our intervention's not working and the content is probably, the grade level content is too much. Okay. Most of the time with this one intervention line, you can get them back on track and we'll see it start going up. Very seldom have I had seen two intervention lines. Okay. This is the one different task that you're going to do on CBM that you haven't done by displaying the data and putting in these intervention lines and an aim line. Okay, so three new terms: baseline, intervention line, aim line. Okay. Probe could be on anything reading related, spelling related, math comprehension, math fluency, any of that. Easy way to locate a probe, and I always throw this out there each semester, there is a website called easycbm.com, and you can get just about any type of probe you want off of that. to assess some current things that you're working on now in your classroom. Okay. You can go on there, click on the grade level, the content and specific skill, and it will provide you a probe. Remember, when you administer that multiple times, I would suggest you get a probe and have it in a format to where you can shift things around. That way it's not in the exact same order each time you administer that. Okay. Eileen, do you have a question?
Yes. Should I do a different thing with this student that's not social emotional for
I
this
would. I would do
assignment?
it more academic on this to get your data. Yeah.
Okay.
It will get, plus it gives you a little wide variety of things that you've assessed in this class, social emotional. Now you're going to focus more on the academic. I would pick out something the student is low in or struggling in. He may struggle with reading fluency or reading comprehension. Okay. And so focus on that skill for this assignment. But I think it would give you a wide range of experience through this 8-week course if you do versus just sticking strictly with the social emotional. Okay.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I just wasn't sure since that's
Yeah.
not her goals, if I
Yeah.
could just pick something else.
Sure. Yeah. On that. Yeah. Yeah. And like on this, a lot of this class is to get experience using different types of assessment and learn how to chart, graph, report the data, how to analyze the data, just to kind of get you in that. Because a lot of times we're not in the habit of doing that. So it gives you different looks, different ways to chart, graph. CBMs really, if if you could do them in over like a whole semester. So let's say when school starts in August, hey, I'm going to give a CBM each week from the first week of school up until we get out at Christmas, and I'm going to chart and plot this so I can see growth. It gives you a visual because if you weren't doing this and you just assumed the student was doing well, and if you'd have been plotting it and saw the scores were dropping, you could have put in an intervention. Okay. But if we don't and go under the assumption that the student is doing okay, then essentially that gap, that learning gap they have is getting wider, it's getting bigger. Okay. So it helps you know that they are progressing. Again, we want to see that those data points in the aim line upward. We want to see those data points match your aim line, your projection with that aim line. Okay, so it's a great visual and to show you they're doing well or to show you, hey, their data points are dropping. I've got to make some adjustments here. I can't keep just doing the same thing. I've got to make some grade level content changes, or I need to try a different intervention because the first intervention, obviously, it didn't work. It wasn't effective. And sometimes that happens. Okay. Sometimes that happens, especially on the behavioral side. When we're working on behavior intervention plans and all that, we write in specific behavioral interventions, right? It's not uncommon for those to not work. The first ones we put in, and we have to go back to the drawing board and revise it and try something different. Okay, so on the BIPs, that's not uncommon. Okay. Easy CBM, EASYCBM.com. It's a free website. Okay, always throw it out there each time we're doing this class. It's a good little resource to use to help you find a probe. Okay, I would start thinking about that because, and the reason I always bring that up this particular week where these two overlap, the CBM and norm reference, we would like for you to have 5 to 6 of those data points. Okay, this is week 5. Sunday will end week 5. Then we have 6, 7, and 8. Okay, which will be CBM. If you remember, now I'm saying this just trying to be proactive to get you to realize how quick this is going to end. Okay. And I always say this each semester during this week. I would strongly encourage you guys to find you a probe, go on that website tonight or tomorrow, kind of look, get you a probe, and maybe go ahead and at least administer it and record, write down the score somewhere. And that way you can spread it out. You can give a probe. This is Wednesday. Let's say hypothetically you gave one Friday. Okay. Then you come back in next week on Tuesday. Then maybe next Friday. So there's three. Then you go into the next week and give a couple more. Okay. By the time you do that, we're at week 7. CBM will be due on that Sunday. And then you have a quick turnaround where you have to take all your information that you've already submitted to me and then put together that mock IEP, and it's due on Wednesday. So it's like, it's quick. Okay. It's quick. So again, looking ahead, week 8 is short. So that's why I always really encourage everybody. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. Go ahead and please start looking for a probe and get that, and maybe go ahead and start administering that. So that way it's not panic time, because time gets away. And this is a busy time of the year, the spring semester, April, into school. It's busy. A lot of distractions. Okay. That way you don't get stressed. Any question about CBM? Next week, I will go over some more information on CBM and talk to you about within the body of this report a couple little new areas. Okay, I've already covered one new area, and it's the addition of this chart that I just went over to show you what it looks like. But in the body of the report, there's going to be a couple little sections that we ask you to provide some information on. Okay. And there's a new one down here at the end. It's a reflection. After your recommendation and conclusion, we included a reflection. And basically, in that reflection, you're going to list 2 to 3 things what you learned by administering the CBMs. Talk about what you feel like a strength of the CBM, perhaps what a weakness is, and then explain would or would you not use CBM again? Okay. This section, there's no right or wrong, guys. It's just your personal feeling based on your experience of doing this. And do you feel like it would be an effective tool, okay, in the classroom? And what do you feel like is a strength? What is a weakness? What did you learn from the CBM? Okay. Again, no right or wrong on that. Just making sure you cover those items. Okay. So that's a new area. Okay. It's just your personal thoughts on that. The second thing is that's new is that for the CBM, the last new area or section is back up here, and it's probe and intervention development. Basically, you're just providing a written explanation of your probe that you selected, what it's intended, or what is it designed to do? What skill is it designed to measure? Okay. And how the student did with it. Was the student receptive? Did the student struggle with it? Okay. So, and you can talk about based on your observations from the 5 to 6 times you administered, how the student did. If you implemented an intervention, they'll talk about it there. If you did not have to do an intervention line, you might state based on students' data points, it was not necessary to implement an intervention and continued administering the probe. The student continued to show improvement each time the probe was administered. That's all you got to say. Okay. So 3 little new sections, probe and intervention section. In that report, you'll have a new chart, graph with data points. And then the third new thing in that body of the report is the reflection section. You're just reflecting on your thoughts. Okay. Again, no right or wrong answer on that. Even if you don't think CBM is worthwhile, put it in there. A negative thing takes more time than I anticipated. I like the data it gives me, but the downfall is it will require a lot of extra time to me administer, especially if you want to do this with all the kids you serve. Okay. I see that some. That's fine. That's your personal feeling on it. Okay. Any questions about that? Please go ahead and start looking for your probe, CBM probe, and get a jump start on it. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, next week I'll dive in a little bit more deeper on CBM and review the body of this report, make sure everyone's on the right track. And then next week I'm also going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about the mock IEP. Okay, just to let you start thinking about it. Because again, it's all going to come to an end here before you know it pretty quick. Okay, so I at least want you to start thinking about it. Any questions on CBM, this part of it, what I covered? Everyone good on that? The other thing I want to make sure you guys got or noticed, I pushed it out. It's in the announcement section. And then I also click for it to email you. So Fort Hayes is doing the graduation reception. So I sent the announcement on that before the ceremony. Did everyone get that in your email and see it in the announcement section? Which most of you, it shouldn't really affect because of where you're at, but I just want to make sure I did it on my all my 822s. I didn't know if anybody I had them in 822. I don't think you should be based on where you're at, but I at least wanted to mention that.
I honestly haven't looked, but I'm
Okay.
not ready for it anyway. So
Okay. All right. And some of you may not be. So if I don't have you in 822, so a lot of you guys aren't that far ahead yet. So I just wanted to at least mention it. So, all right. Everyone feel like they're in a good place with norm reference. We're back on that because that's what's due Sunday. Okay. Start thinking about your probe. Okay. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Okay? Remember, I look at them in the morning and the evening. All right.
thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too.